Today we have Cristelle with us, and she is Anglo-Swiss, and she is working with an NGO called Dil Se, which works on child abuse. She'll be talking all about that and her journey. So let's meet Cristelle. Over to you, Cristelle.
Hi, everybody.
Hello,
Oh,
Cristelle.
hi. Who's Fairy?
Me, Dhwani.
Oh, hi, Tony.
My nickname is Fairy.
Okay, so nice to see lots of familiar faces and some new names. Um, and thank you for inviting me to do this. Uh, okay, so yes, as Preeti told you, I'm Anglo-Swiss. That means that I was born in England. My father was English and my mother is Swiss. So I was born in England and I moved to Switzerland when I was 14. Did all different kinds of jobs there. And then I wanted to try and work for a big NGO called the ICRC, the International Committee for the Red Cross. And they asked me to get some experience, some professional experience in a developing country. So I chose India for several reasons, because lots of people speak English, because I felt that it was quite safe. It was easy to get around, and there was lots of opportunities for volunteer work. And it was also quite cheap back then for me to come over. And I found some voluntary work in a community near Trivandrum in Kerala, where I was able to teach English to some tribal children. I was there for about 3 months. And then I went to Mumbai for 3 months to work in a shelter for street children. And it was a big eye-opener for me. I'd never been in that kind of environment before, and I absolutely loved it. The children there were so full of life compared to what I'd seen. It was like they had nothing. They had no material things. They had old clothes. They had no belongings, but they were so full of life, and there was something in it that something got sparked in me. So I went back to Switzerland, worked again for 6 months, and came back to Mumbai for 6 months to work with these children. And I met another Swiss woman called Marina, and I think during those 3 months, I kind of decided that I didn't really want to work for this big NGO in their offices, but I really wanted to work directly with the children. So at that time, the movie had just come out, the movie Dil Se, and the children from the shelter, the street boys, they'd go up on the roof in the evenings and they'd make up choreographies dancing to the music of Dil Se. And so Marina and I decided that we wanted to start our own NGO. And I didn't really have anything tying me back to Switzerland at that time. So I said, I'll be here, you be in Switzerland. So you do any fundraising and I'll try and set it up here. Although I was the secretary and she was the social worker. So we kind of swapped roles. And actually, I didn't really think about it too much. I didn't, a lot of people say, wow, you were so courageous to do that. But I didn't think about it like that. It was just something that I had to do, and I could do it, and why not? So we started Dil Se, and the idea was that we were going to work with street children. Now, those 3 months when we were in Mumbai, we found out that there was some sexual abuse going on in that shelter for street boys, that some of the older boys had grown up and become kind of staff under the priests, and they were sexually abusing the younger children. And we found out about it, and we went to speak to the priests about it, and they knew it was happening, and they weren't doing anything about it. And we didn't know. This was before POCSO. Now there's an act which makes it compulsory to report. And basically we were all new to this. We didn't really know what to do, but we decided that we couldn't stay in the shelter anymore. And we decided to try and work with this. There was a Japanese Buddhist monk who was there, and we thought maybe we could run a pavement school with him. But then he got threats that he's that they would blow up his temple if he started working with these two white women. So we felt obliged to leave Mumbai, because then it didn't seem safe to us to stay. And the only other place that I knew pretty well was Kerala, which is why we ended up coming down to Kerala. Now, big eye-opener, because I was now looking at it from a different perspective, from a social work perspective, as opposed to a tourist just going through. And there were no street children in Kerala. Kerala is one of the richest states in India, and children who passed through sometimes got off the train, tried to beg or but the Malayalis, they wouldn't have it. They sent them packing, and the kids end up back in the big cities like Mumbai and Delhi. And so, but that was where we were going to work from. And I wasn't a Mother Teresa. I didn't feel prepared to work in slums, and I still needed some bit of cosmopolitan city around me. I needed to be able to go and have a coffee and a piece of chocolate cake somewhere. And, you know, I needed to be able to balance my social work and my social life. And I felt that Cochin was the right place for me. So we stayed, and we went to visit different people working in the field in NGOs. And Childline, they said, well, no, there aren't many street children, but there are children who are in very difficult situations at home. So there are parents who are alcoholics, and there's domestic abuse. That means physical, perhaps parents beating the children, or they don't have enough money. There are rag pickers, and children are left to themselves. So those kind of children, they place them in children's homes. So we opened a children's home in 2001. So just the year after I had kind of decided to move to India. And we ran that home for about 14 years in Cochin. We also had some projects in Madurai, but I don't really want to go into that. We got badly, I'd say, taken advantage of. Partly our fault, because we were very naive, but we got taken advantage of in the sense that money and land was stolen from us. So still in a big court case about that. So I'll stick to Cochin. One of the girls who was in our children's home for 5 years, she was taken back by her parents. They said, we're moving to Bangalore. We want to take her with us. So there was not much we could do. She left, and about a year later, we got a phone call from a social worker in Bangalore who had found this young girl at the railway station. She said that she'd run away from home, and her parents had forced her to get married, and she wanted to get back to Cochin. And she gave them my number. The kids called me Didi, Cristelle Didi, because the first kids who had come to me were from the north of India. So they said she wanted to call Cristelle Didi and see if she could come back to us. Now, our children's home had become a boys' home, because I only had boys left in the home. So I had officially, legally registered it as a boys' home. So I couldn't take her back. But we said, come to Cochin anyway, where you can be close to us, and let's figure things out. So we got Childline and the police to help us to bring her back from Bangalore to Cochin. And by then she was kind of in the system, in the government system, and they put her in a government girls' home. And as soon as she reached, they realized that she was pregnant, and she was 13 years old. I was also pregnant with my second child, but I was 39. So some kind of big difference. But there we were, both in the same, kind of situation. And when they realized she was pregnant, they didn't dare keep her in this home for girls because they thought that she would be a bad influence on the other girls. So, you know, this 13-year-old who had been married off by her parents, and this man of 29, I think he was, who had abused this young girl. And yet she would have been a bad influence on the other children. You already see the kind of social stigma that there is around this. And she was placed in a home for destitute women. And she wasn't a woman, she was 13, she was pregnant. So my husband and I asked the Child Welfare Committee if we could take her home and take care of her, but they wouldn't allow. We asked if we could then take care of her maternal health, you know, her maternal health care, because she was going to a government hospital. I was being taken care of by midwives, and we would have loved to have her join us, but again, they wouldn't allow. They insisted on the government hospital. And finally, the only thing we were able to get was to get her out for prenatal yoga classes. So she'd come along with me for prenatal yoga classes. We both gave birth in April, 4 days apart. I had a water birth, and she had a cesarean. She had a cesarean not because she was in any trouble, but she had a cesarean because she was 13, and people didn't want to take the risk of, you know, something happening. They assumed that a 13-year-old girl is not able to give birth, which is clearly not true. If a 13-year-old girl is able to get pregnant and she's able to carry her child to term, she's capable of giving birth. Again,
Is it from here? Crystal is frozen.
Crystal is frozen.
Crystal, you're on mute, and maybe
yeah,
you
I
can
got
switch off your-
disconnected.
Yeah, so maybe
It disconnected
the
and
internet-
reconnected.
Yeah, so
Can you hear
maybe
me?
you can just yeah. Maybe you can just switch off your camera because your internet is low and you're kind of freezing.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Can you hear
better.
me? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Crystal, better.
It's the campers what to do. So yeah, so we started wondering what other options there could be for these girls, and realized that there was only one that we could think of, and that was that we should open a home for abused pregnant teenagers. And so in 2012, we did that. We opened Tejas Home. That was the name of her son. She'd named him Tejas, so we named our home Tejas Home. And we ran that home for 8 years until COVID, and we could no longer move these girls around. But we took care of 55 girls aged 12 to 17. They'd come to us. Sorry. I'm making myself all emotional. Lots of memories. Good that the video's on. Okay. Give me a second. Oh. Okay. So basically the girls came to us via the Child Welfare Committee. Most of them, the pregnancy was discovered because somebody noticed it, which means that they were several months pregnant and it was too late to terminate the pregnancy. So they would come and we would take care of obviously their shelter, food. They would all get their maternity health care from the midwives that we partnered with. And they would take the pregnancy to term, and some of them chose to keep the babies, some of them chose to relinquish the babies for adoption. Really each case was a very individual. Like I said, we took care of 55 girls from all over Kerala, and roughly half of those were actually consensual relationships, but since they are minors, it was considered a legal case and considered a case of abuse. Where it was consensual and the boyfriend was, perhaps within a 2, maximum 3-year age difference, sometimes it still went to court, but, they'd get let off with a slap on the wrist kind of thing. Obviously, when the young man was above the age of 18, then it would be a lot more serious, and they might get put in prison, and it depended really on a case-by-case basis. But we had some girls who were pregnant from family members. I would say that I think only 2 girls were pregnant from complete strangers. All the other girls were pregnant from somebody that they knew, loved, or trusted. So on a parallel, we're taking care of these girls that abuse has already happened to. We decided that we need to work on prevention also. So we opened what we called the Child Advocacy Centre. We partnered with some lawyers, and we set up a space. We set up an office where families could come for legal support, and with our therapists, they could come for counselling, and we would support them all round, going to see the police, going to the Child Welfare Committee, or all the other things that were necessary. And we started doing prevention of child sexual abuse in schools, in apartment blocks, in Rotary clubs, in wherever we could get a group of adults to listen to us, basically. And if they would allow, then we would also do awareness for the children, personal safety. Which we've continued to do. We've done it in corporate settings as well. We've done it, wherever it was possible to get people to listen to us. COVID hit us quite hard in the sense that, like I mentioned, we had to close They're Just Home. So we waited till our last 2 girls had given birth, and they moved, one into another institution, and one girl went back home, and then we closed the home and the Child Advocacy Centre as well, because we couldn't go there, obviously. So we have been doing prevention online using social media for the last 3 or 4 years, and we've been doing online sessions also. Our plans now are to not reopen They're Just Home. We actually had been looking for a new house to rent to reopen for the last year, but there is so much taboo and stigma again, around this topic, that people don't want to rent their house out to an NGO where there will be pregnant girls and possibly police coming and things like that. They don't want to be associated with it. And so we've decided to not reopen a home, but to focus our energy on prevention mainly. We are working on comprehensive sexuality education and personal safety education, which we want to bring kind of full on into schools and create awareness amongst the kids already to understand consent and boundaries and their bodies and gender and all these important things that many people don't talk about. Take a breath. The reason it's so important, I would say, is that I think the last big study was done in 2007, which is now many, many years ago. But it was on over 12,000 children in about 13 states throughout India. This study was done asking children about sexual abuse, and the results found that every other child, 1 in 2 children, will suffer some form of sexual abuse before the age of 18, and 1 in 5 will suffer severe sexual abuse before the age of 18. This is girls and boys, and this is these statistics are similar in Switzerland, in America, in I don't know other countries, but kind of it's kind of what we see across the world. It's not just India, it's not just the poor neighborhoods, it's not just one religion, it's not just in somebody else's place, it's in every neighborhood, every socioeconomic strata. It's rich, it's poor, it's smart, it's uneducated, it's in every neighborhood, in many houses, and it is still such a sensitive topic. People don't talk about it. And the more we don't talk about it, the more we're keeping this silence, which allows the abusers to keep doing it. And this is what they'll say, our mission statement is prevention and healing of child sexual abuse. Our vision is a world where, child sexual abuse is a thing of the past. And we can only do that by everybody working together, all adults educating themselves on this topic, everybody removing their blinkers and seeing that it's there, and being open to talk about sexuality with children. If abuse happens to a child and they can't talk about it to their own parents, because parents won't talk about sexuality or private parts, or that it's a shame in the house, that it's an embarrassment, that it's dirty. All these things need to be changed. The stigma needs to be removed. The taboo needs to be removed. It's the only way that things can change, and we can move forward and make the world a safer place for our kids. I will stop there, and I am open to any questions or comments that you might have. I also hope that nobody has been triggered by this conversation. I understand that it was a very sensitive topic, and I should have perhaps given a warning at the beginning. It has possibly triggered memories for some of you, and I'm open for a one-to-one discussion after this if anybody feels the need.
Yeah. Cristelle, I don't have any question as of now. It's just that I've heard about child abuse. I've heard people working. I've heard teenage pregnancy and what the children go through or what the mothers go through. And but hearing first time from person who is working with them is I don't know what feelings I have, but then yeah, I'm just listening to you and uh yeah, I'm just there. No questions at this moment.
I will come for a hug later on.
Yeah, so maybe one question which I have is when we hear all these talks, we want to do something, but maybe we just go back to our own routine work. Um, is there anything which you suggest uh, us, me, people who are listening that we can do? Or maybe some options which we have children who are listening, we have parents who are listening. What are different things possible for us to take step apart from our own personal safety? I'm not talking about my own safety. I'm talking about in general. As you said, our mission is to have a child abuse free world. Is there anything which we or anybody who would like to do can do in their own way?
So, like I said, I think that the first thing is to educate yourselves on what it is, to understand how to understand how big it is, how big of a thing it is, how much it can damage somebody. It can people can live very, very absolutely normal lives having been sexually abused, if they're able to talk about it, perhaps get counseling helps a lot. But otherwise, there are an awful lot of problems that can come along with this. Even through to the adult life, trust in other people, issues in relationships, self-esteem, body image. There are a lot of things that it can have issues on your sex life. It can have issues with all kinds of intimacy, and I think we need to understand that by trying to stop child sexual abuse, we would stop a lot of mental health issues as well. Educating oneself, being open to sexuality education, being open-minded parents and teachers and educators and social workers and just adults, being there to being that trusted adult that a child can feel can come and talk to you about anything, that you're not going to freak out and say we don't talk about these things. We do. Dilse does 2-hour workshops or it can be an online session on understanding child sexual abuse. So it's understanding what it is, all what it encompasses, what signs to look out for in an abuser, what signs to look out for in a child who may be being groomed. That means prepared by the abuser before even abuse has happened. It might be looking out for signs in a child who has been abused and therefore being there if a disclosure happens or being able to help. It's teaching children about personal safety, emotions, body parts, private body parts, safe and unsafe touch, all these topics. If you as adults learn about all this, you'll be able to share it with others and ultimately protect others. You might be able to be there for a child. You might be able to help a child before he or her might be abused, or help a child after he or her has been abused. You might be able to help an adult friend who has been abused and be there and understand what they might be going through. It's such an important, I'm very passionate about it. There's a lot that you could do.
Chris, as
Yes.
you very rightly said that it's a taboo topic and our society feels very uncomfortable to talk about it. So, what in that front can be done in the sense that I think w so there's a lot of taboo about this topic. Plus, there is a lot of age restriction about this topic. Okay, means this topic can be talked only after you become an adult or something. That age restriction is there. So, so that's what I want to ask. The earlier you educate the child or any individual about it, the better it is, and be open
Absolutely.
about it.
Yes.
So
in our own families, I mean, as soon as we have a baby, as soon as we're changing a diaper, we talk to the baby, right? Most mothers or fathers talk to the baby while we're changing the diapers or while we're bathing, or that's when we can start using the proper names for the body parts already. So that it also, that's a good time to, I think it's difficult for a lot of people to say even the names of genitals out loud, right? So you can practice on the little ones because they don't mind. They don't know the difference between a penis and a toe, right? In the sense of the word. So you can start already talking to little children using the proper words so that you get used to being able to say them, being able to hear them, removing the shame from your own self and making the baby understand that it's okay, right? As they get older, you then explaining that different parts of the body nobody's allowed to touch unless it's for bathing or after going to the toilet, or if you need to go to the doctors, and mama or papa will always be there. And there's ways of doing it. So actually, we start off personal safety. We have a workbook which is for 4 to 6 year olds, which uses coloring and mazes and join the dots type thing, and to talk about emotions and gender and body parts, private body parts, safe and unsafe touch. All these things you can work up to allowing the child to understand already that the conversation's open, within your own household. Make it known to people around you that my kid knows, right? We talk about this at home. So your secrets are not going to work with us. Yeah, it's a question of empowering the child to understand that he or her body is, my body is my own. I'm the boss of my own body. Nobody gets to touch it if I don't want to. And I'm allowed to say no if I don't want somebody to touch it.
Chris, just an extension of what you're saying. One of the challenges that we face in Indian families, at least, is like the bodily autonomy is not respected. Like even something for children, it's like customary go and hug uncle or sit next to them or the whole. And then with the extended families where, let's say, patriarchy is very dominant, I think, at least in my head, the challenge has been that how do we at least empower the children? Because having conversations about this or around this, it's a big block with the parents,
Right.
But how do we deal with such situations where, children are in families where bodily autonomy or anything around this is a big hush-hush. You don't talk about it. So what do we do?
So if we're having live workshops, then we might go and pinch people's cheeks, and we might go and sit on their lap, or we might hug people and say, do you like it? You know, do you appreciate this? Do you like people doing that to you? When my kids were little and they got their cheeks pinched, I'd say it's okay to pinch their cheeks back. You can do that. If somebody pinches your cheeks, you do it back and see how they like it, because it's not okay. And I feel that, yes, of course, it's difficult. There's a lot of things that are difficult, right? But it's up to the parents to know whether, well, is your child more important? Is your child's safety more important? Or is it that uncle or that auntie being upset by your attitude more important? What is more important?
It's not more important in many families, actually. Still, the child is, that's the sad part. Like, when one has to see that, I mean, that's the sad part for me, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very difficult. This is definitely one thing that's a challenge in India, I'd say, probably in a lot of other countries. In Europe, we find it, there are different things, and you guys know it with Aarohi. I think we call people by our first names, right? I've always told my kids, you don't call anybody uncle and auntie unless they're your uncle and auntie. So my kids have 2 uncles and 1 auntie, and still they call them by their first names. But I'm not anybody's auntie. If a kid calls me auntie, I say, I'm not your auntie. My name's Cristelle, and that's how I appreciate to be called. A lot of people are abused by uncles, I'm afraid to say. and it's uncle, whether it's a real uncle, it's generally not. It's a friend of the family who's an uncle, who, it's somebody who's made to feel like they're somebody closer perhaps than they are, or more trustworthy than they should be. We give them a respect that is not due. There's a lot of that, that needs to be discussed, is respect. It's respect. We shouldn't just respect our elders, but we should also respect our youngers, right?
The individuals,
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
identities.
Yeah.
So also, Cristelle, apart from the age and the respect and all of this, also there is a lot of taboo and differences about girl needs to learn it, boys do not need to learn it. This is another aspect. Another aspect is ki if I expose my child to this kind of conversation or something at early age, my child's innocence will be lost, My child will become adult all of a sudden, and I don't want my child to become, talk elderly kind of stuff at early age. So
Yeah.
all of these things are not there in the society.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I know it's not easy. It's up to us to explain. First of all, there's the thing of, for example, when we say we're going to do sexuality education, they think that we're going to teach them how to have sex, and therefore the children are going to go out there and want to have sex. A nice comparison was like, we teach children in a chemistry lab how to blow things up, but they don't generally go and blow things up, right? They're more careful, right? When you teach children how to use 2 different chemicals, they're not going to start blowing things up. They now know that this and this is dangerous, therefore they're going to be more careful. We need to, make people understand what sexuality is. Actually, it's maybe 50% or less than that to do with the biology, and it's to do with a whole lot of other things, body image and gender and relationships and intimacy and boundaries and consent, for anything, for any situation. I think we should be doing sexuality education for 30-year-olds and 50-year-olds and 70-year-olds, because all of us have our own issues at different ages, and it would be nice to be able to sit in groups and hash it out. We say that teenage moment is a tricky moment. Well, menopause is also a tricky moment, and after menopause is also a tricky moment, and somewhere in between there's relationships and intimacy in all manners is tricky. It's it's a lifelong discussion. Human beings are sexual beings, and yeah, I don't know why it's so difficult to talk about. Openness. We need to learn to be just more open.
Yeah, Chris, I had one thought where I have been part of these programs where around 90 to 95% females suffer only because they had some kind of abuse, child abuse or sexual abuse, kind of, or anything like this. And another side I see where my niece and other small kids, they have this notion that whenever they're alone, they're suspicious of everybody around, even the people, like even maybe her own father. She doesn't allow him to come near her, because in the school it has been taught that with the male you should have certain distance with the male. And then whenever she's alone, she's so watchful, and she's so much into seeing people and holding the phone that we should call someone, because I'm going in this area, and there is nobody here, and there is only one guy there, so it is very suspicious. So I have seen this pattern in many kids, lot of kids. Okay. And then I see in these programs people just cry, they went out, they have these emotions only because of the child abuse. So where is this line? Like I don't understand when you see the younger ones like this, older ones like this. So you want to say something about this?
Okay, so can I ask a question?
Does it have to do with what Sushma just asked?
No, this is my question.
Let
You
me
can carry on.
Hold your question for a second. I'll just reply to Sushma.
Okay.
Okay. I think that there's there needs to be a big difference between awareness and putting fear into people. So I don't know how some of these programs are held. I know that I've heard of of girls being friends with boys until they get their periods, for example, and then they're no longer allowed to hang out with these boys, right? And part of it, I feel, maybe to do with well, we were having this talk with Leela yesterday about how in schools already the girls have to sit here and the boys have to sit here. So if we're thinking of doing some kind of sexuality education, should we do it separately, the girls and the boys? We shouldn't. See, that's the thing, that girls need to know what boys go through as much as boys need to know what girls go through, so that there can be some kind of understanding and mutual respect. So I think that that's one of the problems, is that girls are spoken to in one way and boys are not spoken to. Girls are told to be careful. Boys are not taught to respect. And I think that's where the problem is. So there needs to be a big change, I'm guessing, in whatever kind of sexuality education is handed out. Yeah. And of course, it's all well and good to go and do these sessions on, understanding child sexual abuse, but one needs to be able to pick up the pieces at the end of sessions if pieces do need to be picked up, as in there needs to be some kind of counselling available if kids are leaving sessions in tears because it has happened to them, or adults for that matter. Did that answer your question, Sushma? Dwayne, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, like you told me that you told us that there's a 30-year-old who gave birth. So the type of birth she gave, what's the type of a birth?
What's the type of the birth? You mean how did she give birth?
Yeah.
So the girl that I spoke about earlier, she was 13. They did a cesarean section. That's where they put you to sleep, or half of you to sleep, the lower half to sleep, sometimes only, and they cut open and they remove the baby from the tummy area itself. But we've had girls at the birthing center. The youngest girl was 12 and she gave birth naturally. We've had a lot of girls give birth naturally. What kind of answer are you looking for exactly, Tony? I'm not sure how.
Like what the birth which you gave was water birth. So like in water birth, in water birth, how do you give birth?
A water birth. Okay, there you're in kind of like a little blow-up pool, and there's nice warm water in it, the same temperature as your body. So when the baby comes out, it comes out of the mother's natural fluid that's in the body into a similar temperature fluid. So it's not so much of a shock of the baby coming out of the body straight into the air. So it gives it it's an easier transition for the baby. It's also very relaxing for the mother because you don't have the whole weight of this heavy pregnant body, but you're floating a little bit in the water. So that's quite nice. And then the baby stays underwater for a little while because he's still getting the oxygen through the umbilical cord, and then comes out of that water when he's kind of swimming in the water, and then takes his first breath out of the water.
Breath. Okay, so how many types of birth are there?
Oh, lots of types of birth. Well, there's the cesarean section, which is through operation, and then there are assisted deliveries where maybe the mother is given an injection so that she doesn't feel the pain of the baby coming out when it comes out of the vagina. And then sometimes they need help to pull the baby out. So they use there's one which is forceps, kind of they hold the baby's head and help pull, or another one which is like can't think of the word. It's like
suction pump.
A suction, thank you. And it sucks like suction cups to the top of the head and helps pull the baby out. The advantage of a natural birthing center is that the mama can be in any position she wants to give birth. Often in a hospital, the mamas are lying flat or like this kind of angle, and it's difficult to push something out at that angle, right? If you're upright, you can use gravity to help the baby come out. So sometimes the mamas squat on the floor and they deliver like that, or sometimes they're on their hands and knees, or they might be hanging on to a sari, or any kind of position, whatever position the mother feels comfortable delivering in, she will, and the midwife will catch the baby. Whereas doctors, they like it to be at a reasonable height and they don't have to get too messy. Did that answer your question, Dhoni?
Yeah.
So, Chris, recently for all these co-varsity teens, since they are going out into the industry and working, we had one session on, just sexual harassment or sexual safety at workplace and all.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of very interesting aspects came out from that whole discussion. One of them was that I think for most of them, at least the awareness that, with the authority that you find at a workplace or whatever, at least you can identify your safe spots at home or, trusted friend. And how can you kind of, if you're in such a situation, what do you do or how do you handle it? Or who do you go and, kind of at least discuss it with? And some of us were wondering, why do we need sexual safety at workplace specifically? And very interestingly, it was one of the teens sharing that just by the sheer permanency of the space, right? That you go to work every day, at least for whatever period of time. And if you have to deal with uh, an uncomfortable situation, that can be really traumatizing, and it needs to be acted upon vis-a-vis something that is just a casual, bus may in the bus if something is happening. So yeah, I guess the awareness and just the openness of having these conversations just opens up at so many levels, individuals at so many levels, and they're they know for themselves how they are all well equipped to handle it in their own ways. uh, yeah, I think the discussions really uh, bring a lot of uh, ways to look at this aspect.
Well, it's a different thing in workplaces because it's we're talking about adults. So there's a law called POCSO, which is there to protect children, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, and then there's POSH, which is the act that's there. So you will have a committee in each workplace if there's 10 or more staff, 10 or more employees. Then they have to have this POSH committee. I've just been asked to join a committee from a company close to my home, so I'm reading up on it to understand a little bit more about it. But yeah, I mean, it's sad that we have to have these things, right? At the same time, it's good that they exist, that we can feel comfortable knowing that if something, because often actually sexual abuse I wouldn't say often, but I'd say a decent percentage of sexual abuse is not actually about the sex, but it's about the power.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it has a big impact when it comes to things like a workplace. There are a lot of power games that can be had between bosses and employees, or different levels of jobs in companies.
Interestingly, the POSH, at least by the law, is applicable only like for the female section, and it's up to the companies to make it gender neutral. I mean,
yes,
that's the sad reality we live in. Like, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure that will change. I think that there are people working on trying to get that amended. Because I also had that same question. What if it's man to man, or woman to woman, or woman to man, or which obviously also happens. It's just not there. Before POCSO, there was nothing to protect the boy child. There was something in the Indian Penal Code. Girls were protected in a certain way, but boys weren't. It was as though boys were never sexually abused. The thing is that we tend to protect our girls more and let our boys go, right? Lots of boys are abused as well. Yeah.
So, Chris, as you beautifully talked about power, actually, so maybe it's actually empowering our own children at the very very beginning of their life, at the start, from the start of their life, wherein it's very beautifully covered in Jagriti program, in Aarohi's Jagriti's program, wherein they talk about this thing about the child abuse and all of it, and how we can empower our child, from the very from very early on. So there means, very honestly, it's like our children also know how to protect themselves and how to do things, but it's just that we all have not talked about it. That's what happens generally. This is what I understand, that if we are open to talk, and we can talk with them, and we can have a very very fair and open discussion with them, we'll realize that they are super powerful, and we've just added some more feathers to their wings already that they have. I don't know what I'm saying, but I had a beautiful experience. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, for sure we need to empower them. I mean, it's something that it's difficult to explain why children can't get away from those situations. It's a lot of the time children will blame themselves. Did I make this happen? Is it my fault? Children need to understand that it's never ever. I mean, if a child ever discloses to you, the first thing you need to do is believe the child, because in 99.9% of the times the child is not going to lie about something like this. Kids might lie about all kinds of things, but not about sexual abuse. Nobody would want to go talking about. It's difficult for adults to talk about sexual abuse, let alone for children. So always believe the child. And second is to make sure that you tell the child that it was not his or her fault. That it's never, ever, ever the child's fault when this kind of thing happens. And you may have given all the tools to the child to, it might be, well, I told you this might happen, or, you can't go saying that, because like I mentioned, the fact is that it's nearly always somebody that the child knows, loves, or trusts. It's just too confusing, something like this that happens. It shouldn't be happening. They don't know why it's happening. And then how are they going to go and talk about it? Are they going to get blamed? Are they going to get shamed? There's such a lot of things around it. But you're right. We can only do so much, right? We can't protect our children. They need to learn to cross the road. They need to learn to use scissors and sharp knives and stoves, and we can't protect our children from everything. We can only give them a certain amount of information and without putting the fear into them. I think when we teach a child to cross the road, we tell them every single time we cross the road, we say, be careful of the cars, don't we? It's not a one time, okay, this is a road, and every time you cross a road, you're going to need to be careful. And then we never talk about it again, right? We tell the child every single time. How often are you going to tell a child to be careful with a sharp knife? Every single time the child has a sharp knife, you're going to say, be careful, don't cut yourself, don't burn yourself on the stove, right? But we don't want to make them afraid of fire or afraid of knives or afraid of roads, right? It's finding that balance where we're able to talk about it often enough so it can become part of a conversation at the dinner table. If necessary, it's something that we're all comfortable talking about it. We give that awareness, but we don't make them afraid of it. No.
Yeah, Crystal, I have a question. Regarding the talk, and the other part is all very good, and it's really important, I feel, as a family. But what are the legal frameworks available in our source? If you can help us with that, like certain sections, or if ready handbook. Hello.
Yes, I'm listening very carefully because your voice is very quiet.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear you. So you're you want to know about the laws surrounding
Laws,
child sexual
laws.
abuse?
What a child can. What are the laws available, or what are the sections available, or is there any instant, like which can help the family, to do anything legally? So so this
Okay,
aspect.
so
So if one is aware of such things, it can be more, more beneficial if probably it helps to prevent.
sure. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the bits and pieces about it, but we have an act called POCSO Act. The first and important thing is to know that if you know about a situation of child sexual abuse, it's compulsory to report it. If you as an adult know that a child is being abused and you do not report it, you can go to prison, I think for 6 months. it's even more important, I think, if you're in a position of trust, like your a teacher, lawyer, doctor, policeman, social worker. You know, if you're working with children, if you're a sports instructor, all these things puts you in a position of trust with regards to the POCSO Act. If you go to a police station then to report, there should generally be a woman police officer who's there as the statement is taken. Statement has to be taken. The abuser will be arrested. He or she is not allowed out on bail. There is assistance for the child throughout the whole process. There's a child-friendly court where only the POCSO cases are. The child will be like in a box, does not have to see the abuser in the court. What else? There will never be what is it? There'll never be doubts on what the child is saying. I can't think how you say that in the court. There's the prosecution and there's so the child will never be asked questions, but are you sure? Doubt will never be put onto the child as such. It's up to the abuser, it's up to the accused to defend himself. That's what I mean to say. It's up to like 6 months. So there are many things that encompass child sexual abuse. It can be sexually explicit messaging, sexually explicit talks, showing photographs, showing pornography, taking photographs, invading privacy of the child. It can be touching the child, making a child touch another child. It can be making the child touch the adult or the older child. It's not an abuser is not always necessarily an adult, but sometimes an older or more powerful child. And then it goes as far as penetration, penetrative sex. So all these are different categories within what we call child sexual abuse, and it can go up to life imprisonment for penetrative sex by a person of trust, or if a child, below the age of 12, gets pregnant, or there are different categories like this, but it can go up to life imprisonment.
Okay, sir. You said that it's good.
I hope I answered your question, Pranav.
Yeah, in theory, yes. But I was looking for more specifics in terms of if you have any, your organization or somebody has made any specific ready reckoner or handbook, which can be like, instantly available.
We're in the process of redoing our website, a little bit like Aarohi at the moment, to kind of declutter and hash it all out. We did on our previous one, and we will continue to have a set of FAQs which explains a lot. We also have a POCSO handbook, but that's in an actual book. Maybe that would be useful.
If it's possible, if you could just share it on Discord or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Shifting gears, Chris, you shared that in 2001 you had a friend with whom you swapped the work, this thing, and you just started working just the opposite what you were doing, and the other one picked up your work, that kind of stuff. So in work life, I'm just like kind of shifting from the topic, but in work life, is it easy, and is it very comfortable for a person to shift gears from one work profile to another work profile? So just bringing in another flavor here.
um, I never held down the same job for more than a year. So I'm a ninth standard dropout, as you'd say in India. I don't have any degrees. I did an apprenticeship in sales for 2 years because my mother just wanted me to have some kind of paper. And then I kind of got a job and worked my way up through various companies, but never doing anything for more than a year. But I was never satisfied. I had an apartment, a car, I could go on holiday. Switzerland's very good standard of living. But something was missing. 8 hours a day were just doing office work, but I felt that I was making money for people who already had lots. So that's when I shifted into the thing, okay, I could do this, but for an NGO. I could do this, but for a different an organization that has clearly a very different purpose. And as soon as I got to being with these kids, it was just such a connection. I mean, the busy streets of Mumbai, they'd be holding my hand to help me cross the road, right? It was like life was around the other way around. And I'd see these kids come with their driver in their AC car and get out in their cricket whites, in the school that was just opposite the shelter. Oh, they're all miserable, they had no. And these little kids who had lice and, that not had a haircut for God knows when, and they had, dirty clothes, but they had an old cricket ball, I don't know from where, or some piece of wood, and we'd go to Five Gardens and play cricket, and they just had so much life in them that it just all made sense. Suddenly, this is what I have to do, and there was no question of, but what if, I'm going from a job that pays this much to who knows what, and I think I've just not looked back. It was just what I did a moral contract of 5 years with the NGO that we started, and just couldn't leave after 5 years. Then I met my husband, and then that was it. I mean, I think from going to a 9-to-5 job where you're working for a corporate company to then, making your own decisions. And I didn't know any better. I mean, I was really just working from a gut feeling. This is how it should be done. This is how kids should be taken care of. This is how, really, it was really just trial and error. And I made some big errors, hiring people that I shouldn't have, and, trusting people that I shouldn't have. But one of the kids, I think he was one of the first ones to come. He came from Delhi when he was 6 years old, and he got married. He got married last month, and he works in the Gulf. He works in the UAE. He's a commercial diver now. He came as this raggedy kid from the streets of Delhi, drive me crazy. I thought, if I have 15 of him, I'm going to close the home and go back to Switzerland. But we're so, we're like, he's like an adoptive son kind of thing. He's 28 now. And it was all worthwhile. It was, sometimes you just have to do what your gut tells you, instinct. Go with the flow.
Oh, I think I really loved every bit of it, every bit of what you shared, Crystal, and especially the comparison of uh, look doing an experiment in chemistry lab about uh, two things. When they merge and they blast out, then you're not going to do that thing. You're more cautious about that. So just taking that analogy with the education to people, to children, about sex educations, about abuse and all of it, that when you will educate them, they were not going to actually do it. The fear that people have in their mind that they're not really going to do it. On the contrary, they'll be more cautious about it, and they'll be more powerful. And so that was very, very, very beautiful for me, and I really am taking away that, and plus many other things. Apart from this, anybody who has anything to share for Cristelle today, or else we can close down the session.